Hello YouTube. Good morning, bright and early on a Saturday morning. I was like, once again, I wasn't going to do a video, but I woke up, I was awakened by, because I live in a very interesting area of Brooklyn, Brownsville. And it's people outside my window just acting like it's regular to be yelling and screaming and stuff. So I didn't get much sleep, but I know I'm gonna fall back asleep eventually. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk about the 90s, specifically movies and music. So let me start out with Titanic. Now, Titanic is a household movie. Everybody knows about it. And for me personally, as a kid, I liked it. You know, my favorite line from Titanic was, I had uploaded it on my short story, and she goes, "I'd rather be his whore than your wife." Yo, that's the best thing that a woman could ever say, because it's like, he's like, gutter rat. You want to be with somebody like that? He's poor. He's a gutter rat, you know? And she's like, well, I'd rather be his whore than your wife. And it's like, so many of us as women, you know, we get with a man like that fiance who is just mean and wants to call you out your name and mad that you don't want them, you know, and they'll call you out your name. And it's like, well, if I'm gonna be a hoe, cool, because I don't want to be with you. So it's like you could feel her pain, you know, or whatever like that. And I'm not gonna lie, like watching it as when I was little, I thought she was a little freak. I'm like, Rose is because it's like I actually felt sorry for him when I was a kid, because I felt like, damn, you know, he's engaged to someone who don't want to be with him. And when you watch the beginning, he actually is romantic and he gives her the blue necklace. So it's like, oh, okay, he a good guy, like, you know. But then when he finds out that she's gallivanting with Jack, you know, that's when you see his true colors. And he flips the table over at breakfast, you know, and then you see like the abusive side. And then he goes as far as to frame him for stealing the necklace. He had his partner drop the necklace in his coat pocket. So Rose, being smart, she put two and two together. When the boat was sinking, she's like, you bastard. Like, she realized that he set it up, you know. And I just wanted to let fellas know out there, under the sound of my voice, if you know somebody not feeling you, leave her alone. Because, you know, they have this old saying that's very, very ignorant, and it's get with the person that loves you, don't get with the person you love. Now, she got with somebody that loved her. I believe her fiance did love her, but he was just a little, you know, it's 1912. So of course relationships back then weren't the best because women didn't have rights. So most marriages weren't based on romance. It was, let's keep it real, it was based on finance. It was based on who could take care of you. Most of our grandmothers and great grandmothers didn't work. My grandmother worked, but most women relied on men to be taken care of. It wasn't a love thing, you know. So the mother, a lot of people, I also felt sorry for the mom, because naturally, if you're a kept woman, right, and you're of age, she just looked like she might have been in her 50s. Let's just put a number on it. Let's just say she was 55. If you're a woman of a certain age, let's say she's 55, she's getting old. She's not young and appealing anymore. So therefore, she's not the one to go find a husband. She's now a widow. So she's explaining, there's a scene where she's explaining to Rose, she's like, listen, you got to marry this guy because your father left us in debt, right? She's like, do you want me to work as a seamstress? You know, what job? And women who did work back then, they didn't have the best jobs because they were women. Remember, this is 1912. So it's like, you know, I can't help but to feel sorry for the mother, because it's like, she didn't know that her husband was in debt. But when he died, that's when they found out. And so now they're in a position of, Rose now has to get married to a man to continue to live, right? So the mother is like, how can you be so selfish? Your father left us in debt. What are we going to do? You have to marry this man. And so some people might say, oh, you know, the mother's messed up. But again, this is 1912. This is 1912. So it's like, it's very hard for women to, most women in London, single women were forced to be prostitutes, because again, what job are you gonna have? What jobs are out there? Yeah, you could be a maid and stuff like that, or a governess. That's a fancy term for nanny. But back in those days, to be a nanny, you had to be educated. And to be educated, you had to have money. There was no free public school education. Now, the public school system did start in the late 1800s, I do believe, but that was America, right? You have to understand, these people are not American. So that's why a lot of people will come into America. So Titanic is a movie about immigrants coming to America to make a better life for themselves. So Rosa's family, well, her mom, it was just her and her mom. The lady that was with her, I'm not sure if that was a friend or auntie, but the bigger woman that was nice to Jack, she let him wear tux, you know. But you have to understand the position of a woman back then, a non-American. Now, you do have some women that became lunky, such as Madam C.J. Walker. She became the first black millionaire making hair products. But your average woman during that time was very poor, uneducated, and unless she were married, she was very poor, right? To the point that she couldn't take care of herself, right? So her mother is begging her, like, listen, you have to marry this guy, because what are we going to do? Your father left us nothing. Your father left us in debt, you know. So basically, Rose was just like Jack, just well dressed, you know. So Rose also had some mental health issues. She tried to kill herself. And I wanted to talk about that, because everybody's like, oh, you know, they fell in love and stuff. That is not love. Now, do I believe in love at first sight? Absolutely. I believe in love at first sight. And the reason why I believe in love at first sight is because you have people that don't know you and hate you. You have people who, somebody could hate on you through social media and hate you. How many people have died over social media? How many people have gotten robbed and killed at a gas station? How many people have gotten shot at a mass shooting? How many people have been killed by serial killers? That serial killer didn't know them, right? So you have people that will hate you at first sight. So flip that over, love at first sight. You know, many of my friends, the day we met, we exchanged numbers because it was just chemistry, and it was just, you know, we got along. You know, it don't take long for, you know, most of my friends, some of my friendships, you know, it took time. But, you know, when you click with somebody, you just click, you know. So I believe in love at first sight. But for Rose and Jack, that wasn't love. It was an outlet. And I wanted to talk a little about that before I start talking about the other 90s stuff. But be careful of being someone's rebound. You know, most relationships that are based on deceit and lies, or not even deceit and lies, because he knew that she was engaged after he rescued her. Like, the fiance came to the front and she explained, like, she didn't want to come out and say, oh, I tried to kill myself. But she basically let them know that he's responsible for her rescue. She let that be known. The fiance didn't pick up on the chemistry that they had until later on. But naturally, she fell for him, you know, because he was there for her at her time of need. And I had to sit and think about it as well. Sometimes as women, you could be going through a bad breakup, or you could be in a bad relationship, and a man could come along and be nice to you. And so what happens? We get all these gushy feelings like, oh, he must like me, and I think I like him too, and I think I'm falling for him, and this and that. No, God sends you angels and somebody. And right when I was going through my little situation, I heard 2 sermons on Instagram, and they were saying that, they said, God sends you to help, but y'all make the mistake and sleep with him. You know, that wasn't supposed to happen. The person's supposed to remind you of who you are and who you are in God, and help you move on from a bad situation, and that's it. It was just a pass ago. You know, it's not meant to, it wasn't meant for anything more than that, you know. So with Rose, it's like he was there to help her and stuff like that. And then let's keep it real, a person like Jack, he probably a low-key opportunist. Like, she's a rich girl at the end of the day. She can help him in many, many ways. So she herself wasn't rich, but her fiance was, right? So that makes her rich by default. But, you know, he could have been trying to use her or level up, or, you know, whatever. But that is not love in its purest form. And we all know as adults that when you get with somebody off of convenience, or if they're an outlet, those type of relationships normally don't last. You know, if you get a girl and she's crying over her ex, or she's mourning, what I like to call grieving, it's not necessarily because he died, but the relationship is over. My theory is the first 3 months of a breakup is a very vulnerable time, or in her case, she still was with him. So at that time, that's not the time to be engaging with any man. That's not a time to be any of that. That's a time to just stay to yourself and try to figure out what you need to do, right? Because you're very vulnerable at that state. You can't really make rash decisions, right? And then she tried to kill herself, so obviously there's some mental health issues. So that whole dynamic was just wrong. Was just wrong. And then it's like they got a little horny. Within 3 days, he got some in the back of the car. You know, that's everybody's favorite scene. But you know, it's not love. It's not love in its purest form. You know, that's lust. Let's keep it real. It's lust. And, you know, Rose is confused. There's even a scene when she's telling him, like, hey, I'm getting married and I do love my fiance. You know, and he's like, no, you don't. Da, 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 da. But, you know, the fiance realizes that, you know, she's falling for him. And then at the very end, he tries to shoot them both and they're running from him, you know. And she tried to, the part that pissed me off is she tried to get him twice and he still died in the end. But I think they let him die in the end because they wanted to show you that that's not real. And I think that's what I don't like about it. It's not real. But because a relationship based on that, from where it came from, it would have never lasted. Like, she would have been on his case about having money. He would have been like, you too bougie. It's just, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked out. You know. But it's very educational. I saw a few documentaries, as I told y'all before in my previous video. Um, the violin playing, that's accurate. Them hitting the iceberg, that's accurate. And when the boat sank, it took 2 hours for the boat to sink. 2 hours for the entire boat to sink. And it's like, I have a smart TV, so I don't know if y'all remember, but I saw Titanic originally in the movie theaters. And in the movie theaters as a kid, I was 8 years old when I saw Titanic for the first time. And I remember like the boat just looking so real, and like the water looking so real in the movie theater. But those of y'all who got smart TVs, it looked like a pool. It looked not even a pool. It looks like a cardboard picture with a toy boat. Like it looks so fake, but the detail was still pretty good. But the thing that did look real is them sliding down. Like that looks so sad, because it's like that could really God forbid that could really happen. Like you just slide into your death. You know, it's just like, it's crazy. And then Rose and Jack, they get to the back of the boat, and they just get into the water, and it's just crazy. But very interesting story. And I think mostly everybody kind of knows, you know, the love story is kind of made up. And they wanted to make it interesting, so that's why they made that part up, you know, because people are not going to sit there and watch a documentary about a Titanic in the movie theaters. So that's what they put the Rose and Jack story, so it could be watchable, so it could be, you know, whatever. But another part of the 90s, I'm like, the 90s was just so classic. Lion King came out in 95. Aladdin came out the year after. Mulan came out like around 98, 99. Like the 90s was a time that was so epic. It was a lot of crime. The Shonda Rhimes story was the 90s. Princess Diana died in 97, I think it was. Tupac and Biggie died in the 90s. Aaliyah was super famous in the 90s. Brandy, Monica, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Spice Girls. I mean, the 90s was just such a special time. Nickelodeon. Once it turned the year 2000, everything got whack. Like literally, it wasn't no more pop music anymore. Pop music really died, I would say, like 2003. That's when you didn't hear nothing no more. Like literally, that genre just disappeared. Country rock with like Faith Hill, that died out. They still have country, but they don't have country rock. Gospel music is almost extinct. Like you really don't. All the gospel music, every time you go to church, they always play music from 2005 and before, because there is no gospel music. Like nobody's coming out with new gospel music. Rap, I really believe, I said this in my Tupac video, when Tupac and Biggie died, rap died right along with it. There's a few rap songs that I appreciate from my high school era in 05 and 07 and stuff, but they're not classic. You get what I'm saying? Those were parties. That was the 2000s for hip hop, was literally a party era. From 50 Cent to Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, Lil Scrappy. You know, if you play their song now, people bounce to it. But can we really call that classic? No. Biggie is classic. Tupac is classic. You know, NWA is classic. Queen Latifah, UNITY. You know what I'm saying? MC Lyte. It was just a classic era. Even R. Kelly, you know, and could be debatable, but the best music that R. Kelly came out with was the 90s. Now, he had some hits in the 2000s. Of course, we know this. But the best era of R. Kelly, his best, I'm talking about la creme. His best moments was the 90s for him. You know, yes, we have Happy People, Chocolate Factory, and that's wonderful. But his classics was with Aaliyah and the things that he did after Aaliyah in the 90s. You know, Body Love, and, you know, just classic R&B. You know, just classic, just timeless. Like, when you listen to songs from the 90s, it just brings you to a place of relaxation and just, you know, and in the 90s, anybody who lived through the 90s, the crime was horrific. Like, when I grew up with my parents, we only had one TV at home. That's all we needed. But, and I remember my father worked that night, so me and my mom would share the TV, and at 10 o'clock she's like, I'm gonna watch my news now, you know. So she would watch her news, and I remember the news was just so bad in the 90s. I remember the Bronx was just so bad. Somebody was always getting raped. I just never understood it. Like, the Bronx was like the borough of rapes. People was getting raped all the time. Stabbed, raped, stabbed, raped, stabbed, raped. The Bronx, like, all the time. Central Park 5, them being falsely accused. That rape that happened, they didn't do it, but there was a rape that happened. That wasn't the only rape. I remember them constantly saying somebody in Central Park was getting raped, and I just couldn't understand. I'm like, Mommy, Daddy, why do people still go to that park? Like, I don't remember going to Central Park as a kid. I don't think my parents took me. They took me to Prospect Park in Brooklyn. Like, when I was little, my parents always took me to Grand Army Plaza. That was our go-to spot. And then once I had my son, I took him there. You know, the library is beautiful. That reminds me, I gotta renew my son's passport, because that's where we got our passports, from that library. But that was like the go-to spot. Prospect Park is right there, you know. Very beautiful area, you know, right by downtown Brooklyn. You know, a lot of people don't know that area. They know downtown Brooklyn. But keep walking, get to Barclays, keep walking, and boom, you're right there in the vicinity of Prospect Park. You know, always my go-to spot. But yeah, Central Park, I really don't remember going to Central Park as a kid. I went there as an adult. The first time I went as an adult is they had a Beyonce was at Good Morning America, and I went to go see her at 5 in the morning. Yeah, and she was so far away from me. And people were there from the night before. It was crazy. But that was my first memory of going to Central. No, I went to Central Park with my job city. Yeah, they had us going everywhere. So I feel like, yeah, we definitely went there on like a Friday or something. And then on my leisure, 2011, going there to see Beyonce, or whatever. And yeah, and then started taking my son there more often, you know. And every now and again I'll go. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful park, Central Park. It's a tourist attraction. Like, literally, people come from all over the world and be like, let's go to Central Park, you know. Because, and the beautiful thing about Central Park is that it extends, like, it's very long. So it goes from 59th Street, Columbus Circle, and then it goes all the way into Harlem. So it's a very huge park. You can't just walk throughout the park. You got to take a train ride. It's a very, very, very big park, very huge. But I remember the 90s, something was always going on. As beautiful as that park was, at nighttime, everybody knew, do not be in that park at night. I just never understood why people go to the park at night. But, I guess to each his own. I remember two different guys. I think I told y'all about Ivan, the compulsive liar. He tried to get me to the park, some park on Supton Boulevard. And I'm like, what you trying to get me robbed? Because just listening to the news in the 90s, like, I would never go to no park at night. Have I been to a park at night? No, I haven't. Yeah, no, I haven't. I just wouldn't do that. It's not safe. But yeah, the 90s was a classic time. I mean, if I had a time machine, I would go back just for one day. Church was good back in the day. Choirs, it was lit. It was like a really special time. You had dial-up, because my father got a computer for us when I was in second grade. I said us. My mother never used that computer, but the computer Packard Bell, and I remember dial-up, and it was a cord, and it was so funny. But going on the internet was a struggle back in the 90s, kids. Y'all got it so easy now, but in the 90s. And then we had cable TV. We didn't have smart TV. We had cable TV. And I don't ever remember not having cable. Like, my father was very into technology. So we always had, like, the computer. I remember we got that in second grade. I remember driving to the mall and getting a computer. And nobody else had a computer. I was in second grade, like, when Tupac died, and we had a computer in the house. We just always, and then before that, we had a word processing unit. I don't know if y'all remember that. The brother, and my father had a bunch of floppy disks. Like, my father was always heavy into technology. So we had that. He got the computer when I was in second grade. We always had cable. Like, I don't remember not having cable. We always had cable. We had 85 channels. Some people had more. They had something called a dish. And the funny thing is, some people still have that dish, because I see it when I walk around in different neighborhoods. People still have the dish. Satellite dish. But I remember my friends said how they had up to 1,000 channels with that. But for people with the basic Optimum Cablevision, because I don't know if y'all remember, but Optimum used to be Cablevision. Now they Optimum, but it used to be Cablevision. Cablevision, we had 85 channels. I remember that. Flat 85. And that's all I needed. My Nickelodeon, I didn't start, my parents are very old school and religious, so I didn't start watching BET until I was in 6th grade, and my friends in school was like, you don't watch BET? And I'm like, what's BET? And they told me 106 and Park, da da da. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I started watching Comic View. And I remember when my father would leave to go to work, and if my mother was asleep, because my mother was strict on her news. She was like, 10 o'clock, I'm watching my news, Crystal. But if she was asleep, I would watch Comic View. And that was my joint. And I was blessed to see a lot of pre-pandemic, a lot of the comedians from Comic View, they came to the diner, Lindenwood Diner, Laughaholics, and a few of them are doing quite well. They don't do the diner no more. Since the pandemic, there's no more Laughaholics, and they don't do that at the diner no more. So once a year they do it at Barclays now. So Rajon, the Dominican guy with the glasses, he's expanded to the Barclays. So I guess that's cool. It's just I'm gonna miss that though. The comedy shows at the diner. The diner's right across the street from my parents. So I live in Brownsville. I would just go there, whatever, and it was cool. And they used to be in the movie theater, and they had Michael Blackson at the movie theater. The guy from Martin, he was at the movie theater. Like, you know, they had a lot of good people that would come and perform right in Brooklyn, right in the hood, you know. And it was good because, you know, he had connects. And I remember those tickets used to be $20 at the movie theater, and then when they came to the diner, it was $10, you know. But he still had famous people come and do a comedy show. I met Coco Brown, comedian. Yeah, it was, I'm gonna miss it. But yeah, then you had Players Club that came out in the 90s, Jamie Foxx show. We had sitcoms. That's another thing about the 90s. We had sitcoms. We don't have, now we have Love and Hip Hop. You know, it's just a shame that we don't have not one sitcom. We do have a sitcom on Netflix, but nobody watches that with Tia Mowry. Nobody watches that. You know, Family Reunion. But the 90s was just a time of just invention, and it was just so many good movies, you know, classic. That's the best way I could describe the 90s. Classic era. Classic after classic after classic. Right after Titanic, you have Beloved, right? Right after Beloved, you know, you had so many good movies that came out from the 90s alone. You know, music, so many things came out from the 90s. You know, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, bring the 90s back. Probably not, but I just feel like, and it's funny because we in 2023, but nobody says that the 2020s. We really are in the 20s. We're in the 20s. Just like in the 1900s, it's 1920s. We're in the 2020s. You know, but it's like nothing's really being invented or whatever. Like the only thing that's like major is social media. Like 100 years from now, they'll be like social media was very, and I feel like social media is gonna eventually die down because it's overrated. You know, it really is. And I feel like social media has done more harm than good. It really has. So many people have died over social media. People have killed their significant others on social media. People have killed themselves on social media. So much negativity, you know, unfortunately. And yeah, it's just we're living in a time now that's just kind of like boring. Just boring. Like nobody wants to think of anything. Yes, you still have your writers and you do have good shows here and there, but it's nothing like the 90s. Nothing like it. You know, nothing like it. And those are my thoughts.